Oregon might have just landed their most important recruit in the 2025 cycle.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks, which is why if you have not already, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more, not less, more as the playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone. Every day, all summer long, visit FanDuel.com to get started. Trey McNutt was not the only Oregon Duck commit over the weekend. A quarterback of the future, potentially in the 2026 class. Talk about Jonas Williams, and the Kenyon Sadiq hype train is big time. I'm definitely 100% here for it, but Trey McNutt is a big commitment for Oregon. And the reason I say it might be the biggest commit yet of the 2025 class is because of where Oregon's class was sitting going into Saturday. It had fallen outside the top 10. The number of, needle-moving five-star recruits that were still out there and available that Oregon had a chance at or has a chance at, the numbers are starting to dwindle. You really only had a handful of guys. And I think it's clear at this point that the volume of this 2025 recruiting class is not going to be at the same level of the last two cycles that Dan Lanning and the staff have put together. But McNutt is, capable of being a big-time player, as I'll get to, but the impact that it has on the recruiting class ranking and the momentum and the stabilization I think it brings to the minds of a lot of Oregon fans out there that follow recruiting really heavily of, okay, things were not looking great. And as I'm recording the show, Isaiah Mosey is not decommitted. That had been rumored for a while. And Josiah Sharma and Deshaun Brame, they both flipped elsewhere. And so the recruiting momentum that Oregon had, it kind of slowed down. But unlimited NIL is back, baby. It's so back. It is back like Texas football, who definitely don't have NIL. So, oh gosh, where were all the pundits and the coaches and the subtle and the YouTube comments when Oregon had two players decommit? Where'd they go? They got quiet really, really quickly. It's almost like NIL is part of the game, but not the entire game. Almost. What a crazy concept. But this is a big commitment for the Ducks because their recruiting class ranking on 24/7 Sports back inside the top 10. This is the number one safety in the class of 2025. So Oregon right now, again, depends on which service you look at. I look at 24/7. Oregon has the number one receiver and the number one safety, DeCorian Moore and Trey McNutt. That's big time stuff from Dan Lanning and the staff. The way that they have recruited over the last couple of years, I think they have raised the floor and the ceiling at the same time. And that's not an easy thing to do. It's great if you can do one and say, look, you can't have anywhere lower than top 15 class with the way this staff recruits. But they've just kind of simultaneously shown, yeah, you can get inside the top 5 and you'll never be outside the top 10 if things are right. So McNutt, 6 foot, 180 pound safety, number one in his class out of Cleveland, Ohio, Shaker Heights High School, pulled him right out of Ohio State's backyard. And there was an awesome video that that the Oregon social team, who are just on fire. I mean, that social department, whatever they're making, I hope it is sufficient to the quality of content that they put out. Whether it's the duck, the inflatable duck, all this stuff. The video that he put out was just over 2 minutes long, and it was great. And that makes me feel comforted in that I don't think flipping him is going to be a particularly easy thing to do, because that's not the sort of, promotion for a commitment that every recruit gets. Now, maybe it's because he's a big-time recruit and other schools are certainly going to try and continue recruiting him and whatnot, but to me, that makes me think, yeah, he's locked into Oregon and will stick around. But Texas A&M was after him, Florida was after him, USC. There were a bunch of big-time schools that were after Trey McNutt. Obviously, number one player, consensus 5-star, or composite 5-star in 24/7 at least. and, number one player at his position, yeah, he's going to have a lot of big time offers. And this is just a great recruiting poll by Oregon. By the way, this is going to be a daily occurrence. I will just kind of slide in the number of days until Oregon's first football game, 26. We're 26 days away from game one. So continuing along with McNutt, who is a big-time player, Alan Trieu of 24/7 Sports had this to say in his scouting report, quote, track athlete who brings that speed to the football field. He runs a 4.44 40-yard dash. Just for reference, Marcus Mariota, I believe his 40 time was 4.45. So he's about as fast as Marcus Mariota. Good high school receiver who shows twitch and ball skills that will translate to defense, but not out of the question a school could give him offensive looks, has played safety and corner, will come down from the safety position, support the run, good tackler who will hit and drive through contact, not just a drag down tackler, and takes good angles, can be a college free safety, nickel, or move around for a defense. He goes on, but that to me is a really valuable thing for Oregon to have when you look at the number of players that are going to leave the defensive secondary after the season. I mean, Jabbar Muhammad out of eligibility. I think Nico Reed is out of eligibility. Brandon Johnson, I think, is done after this year. Tyshim Johnson's done. Kobe Savage will be done. Like, a lot of guys are going to move on. You want to have options, and this guy can go anywhere and do all sorts of stuff. When I watched his highlight film, doesn't have a ton of ball skill highlights in there. And, I'll talk to Brian later this week and whether that's, a point of concern, because I think Oregon's really been missing that ball skill, ball hawking safety on the back end of the defense over the last couple of years, ever since Verone McKinley left. I don't think they've had a great one. Certainly this is a guy that projects as an elite run defender. When I see the way that he gets downhill, first of all, he's an incredibly fluid athlete. I mean, he is not running at full speed sometimes and pulling away from guys on his highlight film. Like he is a really, that speed is no joke. So that's the first thing. Second thing, he gets downhill quickly. He is an excellent tackler. I see a lot of Javon Holland and Evan Williams with the way he comes down and plays the run. I think the question as to what position is going to suit him best, how is he against the pass? How is he in man-to-man coverage situations? And like I said, I'll have Brian on later this week to talk about what he can bring to the table on that front. A guy that plays receiver, though, I'm inclined to like those guys because I'm a Seahawks fan, and Richard Sherman played receiver, switched to corner, and is one of the best corners in the NFL in the last 20 years. So it's a big-time pickup for Oregon's class. It's a big-time pickup positionally. The safety room is going to be a free-for-all next year, depending on what Oregon does in the transfer portal. But this is the sort of guy that can make an instant impact. And there's a big pickup for the Ducks, stabilizing the recruiting momentum like I mentioned, and reintroducing the possibility. Michael Terry is still out there. He's a 5-star. Oregon's after him. McNutt had Oregon jump up 5 spots from the 11th class to the 6th class, at least last that I had seen. And I think that if they go, they're sitting number 6 nationally right now with 4 composite 5-stars. Dallas Wilson, a receiver, Dorian Brew and Trey McNutt, defensive backs, and DeCorian Moore, a receiver. So they're doing really, really well recruiting those positions and getting the highly rated guys and winning these recruiting battles. It's exactly what you want to see if you want Oregon to be a sustainable Big Ten title contender. Because who has the number 1 recruiting class in the 2025 cycle in the country right now? Ohio State. You got to have these sorts of players. You got to have them available, even if you plan to hit the transfer portal in the offseason. So big pickup for the Ducks. Big pickup for the Ducks here. But Michael Terry is still out there. Jonah Williams is still out there. Juan Gaston Jr., who's probably going to Georgia, but nothing is set in stone until a guy actually commits. There are still names that Oregon can add to this 2025 class, but McNutt was one of the big targets, and it is a really, really good thing that Oregon landed him. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter, with your thoughts. I have thoughts on the Oregon quarterback room. It is as strong as it has ever been. Coming up next. Coming up right now is eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships. is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They've got superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors, they've got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. They've got all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins, like landing Trey McNutt in the class of 2025. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. That's a joyous second segment sip right there when Oregon does what we'd like them to do on the recruiting trail. Let's talk quarterbacks, because Oregon is already recruiting well in the class of 2026, and this is why it takes a village, not just to raise a child, but to put together a recruiting class. These things are one and the same and of equal importance and value to society. If you think I'm being dead serious, I could be. Yeah, anyway. Jonas Williams, 4-star 2026 quarterback, commits to Oregon, 95.48 composite score, top 10 quarterback in the country out of New Lenox, Illinois. So Oregon's commits over the weekend from Ohio and Illinois. National brand power does that sort of thing. Maybe he liked the blow-up duck in Indianapolis. The duck has made his way to not most, but a healthy number of Big Ten campuses at this point, wanting to be metaphorically or literally let in to the gates. He's been to Wisconsin, Northwestern in their dig site, and just getting on guys' radars. And here's Jonas Williams committing from the state of Illinois. So when I watch Jonas Williams film, I actually see a faster Dante Moore. So Dante Moore is about 6'1" or so. Williams kind of a similar height, 6'1.5", 200 pounds. He's decently thin. He is a really good athlete. Top 100 player overall in the class of 2026. And like I said, a top 10 quarterback, number one player in the state of Illinois. He has got a gorgeous, and I mean gorgeous arc on his deep ball. There are definitely some throws I see on his highlight reel that will not translate to the college level, but guess what? This kid is not a 25 recruit. He's a 26 recruit and has plenty of time to grow and continue to progress, which I think he can. But the reason I compare him to Dante Moore with more speed is they have similar looking throwing motions in that they are very quick, they're very polished, and they're just very easy. It is a quick, easy, accurate release. And you combine that with a guy who, when he takes off to run, kind of looks like Mariota running on film, like this, or Luke Moga, for instance. This guy is a dynamic athlete, can absolutely be a starting quarterback one day. And the reason I talk about him on today's show when he's a 2026 recruit is twofold. Number one, it's part of Oregon's recruiting momentum right now. Number two, they are already recruiting well for the class of 2026. And number three, when you have a quarterback early in the class, it can oftentimes serve as a foundational piece. Oregon is having a great recruiting class in 2025 with wide receivers. 5-star DeCorian Moore, 5-star Dallas Wilson. You've got Isaiah Mosey in there. You've got Cooper Perry in there. A couple of 4-star guys like that's a great Junior Adams doing one heck of a job recruiting that position group. You know who one of the earliest commits in the 25 cycle has been for a long time? Achilles Smith Jr., the quarterback. And this Oregon quarterback room is as set in the long run as I can ever remember, because you've got Dylan Gabriel for this year, Dante Moore for next year. You could have Dante Moore for the 26 season. You might not. By that time, you'll probably have a competition. And by the way, Austin Novosad could also be the starter in 2025. We saw what he did in the spring game. Dude is super talented. And yeah, I'd expect it to be Dante Moore. I don't know that that's a lot. I think Lanning's going to play the guy who is the best. And yeah, that could be Dante Moore, but man, Novosad looked really, really good. But let's say that plan progresses and Moore's the starter in 25. If he sticks around for 26, yeah, you'd probably have a guy like Luke Moga transfer out, but then you'd have Achilles Smith Jr. And then you'd be bringing in Jonas Williams in that 2026 class, which has already got a lineup of weapons that look incredibly promising because Williams is at quarterback. You've got Jordan Davidson. No, that's not right. I forgot the guy's name. Look at that. Everybody makes a mistake or has a moment of cerebral flatulence, as my high school history teacher, Mr. Noble, used to say. Tredarian Ball, see, Jordan Davidson's in the 25 cycle. Tredarian Ball, though, who is a freak athlete and could continue to climb up the recruiting rankings as time goes on. He's already there in the class of 2026. So too is Tony Cumberland, 5-star defensive lineman in that 26 cycle. This is how recruiting works. You start early. If you're not starting early, somebody else is. But you already have those two guys, Tredarian Ball and Jonas Williams. But also remember, 2024 5-star wideout commit Gatlin Bear is taking a 2-year mission. So when does he show up? 2026. That's going to be a loaded lineup of talent in a couple of years. And Oregon has that this year, and Oregon has that next year. And the stacking of high-end recruiting classes is how you win at a high level and compete for national championships year in, year out. I know the transfer portal matters. Of course it does. The big-time programs, they're still recruiting high school kids at an elite clip. So I like what I see from Williams, his ability and willingness to push the ball down the field. I think is really good. He's got a strong arm. Like he has the sort of arm and the sort of frame. You know, he reminds me a little bit as well of like a slightly shorter version of Nico Iamaleava, who was once upon a time discussed on this show as a potential Oregon quarterback commit. He's going to be the starting quarterback at Tennessee this year. He just kind of has that long, kind of tall, lanky frame. You know, Achilles Smith Jr. certainly has that. He's taller than Williams is, because Achilles Smith is, you know, kind of in the 6'4", 6'5" range, and Williams is listed at 6'1.5". He looks taller on film to me, but that just could be a product of the people that are around him and how big they are. But he's got the arm strength, he's got the mobility, and he's got the touch. You know, his ball has got some serious zip when it comes out of his arm. So I think this quarterback plan looks great. And yeah, the option of bringing in a transfer is always there, but you want to have that be an option, not a requirement. Because the number of great quarterbacks who could play at the level Oregon expects their quarterbacks to be that are available every year, not a 100% hit rate that you're always going to have Bo Nix or Dylan Gabriel out there. Or if they are available, there's no guarantee that every single year you're going to be able to get that guy to come to Oregon. Sure, you have a strong pitch. You have the ability to go in the portal and say, hey, we have an opportunity to win a conference championship, to win a national championship. There are NIL opportunities, and it's Oregon, for goodness sake. We've got a great offensive coordinator in Will Stein. We'll see how much longer Stein is able to stick around if he keeps recruiting like this and if Oregon has a lot of success on the field. But this quarterback plan just looks so great. And yeah, any one of these high school kids could, you know, have the Ty Thompson situation where they don't really get a chance to start because Oregon brings in a transfer. As an Oregon fan, you can think that's frustrating. At the end of the day, what you should want is the best possible play from the position. And I think having all of these guys committed now and in the future and have their timelines all line up so that you can have some guys compete. I mean, if Williams is ready to compete as a true freshman, maybe he and Luke Moga are battling it out for the starting job in 2026. You know, maybe Achilles Smith Jr.'s got, or maybe Achilles is ready and that's his time. I think having all these guys who are talented blue chip prospects who have got all the physical tools and just need to be molded into college starting quarterbacks, I think it's a great place for Oregon to be. And I cannot remember the last time that Oregon legitimately had a quarterback plan that could be thought of as set in stone, or at least set with a baseline level of fairly high production for the next 5 to 6 seasons. Like 24, you good. 25, you're good. 26, someone will be ready by that. And 27, Achilles Smith Jr. could be, you know, a redshirt sophomore in 2027. And if that's when he starts, and he starts 27-28, Jonas Williams, like, I know I'm projecting way out into the future here, but I think this is a great place for Oregon to be. I'm here for it. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments, or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter. I have been all aboard. Choo-choo. That was bad. It wasn't enthusiastic enough. That was too half-hearted. But I've been aboard the Kenyon Sadiq hype train for quite a while. Everybody else seems to be getting on board. Are you going to join me? That's coming up next. First, we're talking about FanDuel. I love sports. You love sports. And we love them so much, we never want them to stop. But as the playoffs have wound down, we get fewer games, and sports aren't sportsing like we want them to. But FanDuel lets us keep the sports going whenever we want. 24/7, 365, that app is available, and all you have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime that you're in the mood. It really is that easy, and everything you want for Oregon's over there. It's just fascinating to look around. See the betting lines for games like Washington or Michigan or Ohio State or Oregon's win total, tied for the highest in all of college football. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. They have something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer and how much is left. FanDuel.com, FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. You ever see B-Movie? There's a scene where the pollen jocks are getting ready to leave the hive and go pollinate flowers. And they start, in like army style. They have this march where they kind of shuffle into place, and they're just all chanting, buzz, 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 buzz. That's what Kenyon Sadiq is generating right now. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Lots of buzz. Terrance Ferguson, I talked to him at Big Ten Media Days, and when I asked him about the tight end room, he said straight up, yeah, Kenyon Sadiq can be better than any of us. It's pretty high praise since T. Ferg is going to be probably a mid-round NFL draft pick, and Patrick Herbert likely gets signed as an undrafted free agent. Like, you got a really good tight end room, and he's just straight up saying, yeah, that dude coming behind me, he's going to be better than all of us. That's the sort of athletic profile he brings to the table. He's a different sort of tight end than Oregon has had in the past because he is a Brock Bowers type, stylistically. You can give him the ball on fly sweeps. He will have plays this year that are designed just to get him the football. We saw it a little bit last year. I think on those, read triple options or RPO flat reads that Will Stein loves to call, T. Ferg is great, and he's a hard guy to tackle. Sadiq is not so much, I'm going to shed off a tackler and just kind of stiff arm him to the ground. He's just going to run around you or juke you out or beat a linebacker to the edge who's trailing because he bit on the play fake inside, and he gets to the flat and suddenly he makes a corner and he's bolting down the sideline. I think his potential is immense. I've loved him since he committed to Oregon. His role last year was present, to be sure, as a true freshman, but minimal. I think it'll be higher this year. He's someone who I can see lining up in the backfield, which we saw a little bit last year. You can just hand him the football. You just hand him the football. Like, he's just a freak in the best sense of the term. He's a physical and athletic freak. And T. Ferg was asked about him recently again at an interview after practice and spoke very glowingly and said the same sort of thing. Like, yeah, he could be the best, tight end that Oregon's had in the last several years. And that's T. Ferg being modest because he's a stud. And he's going to play on Sundays, I think, for quite a long time. But I am really, really high on his profile because you can line him up. He probably has the most positional versatility of any singular football player on offense. You can line him up in the backfield, and he could lead block. You can line him up in the backfield, hand the ball off to him. You could throw it to him out of the backfield. You could run him into the flat. You could give it to him on a fly sweep, or you can just line him up as a wide receiver, which is kind of what he played in high school. So how many other guys could do that? Trayshawn Holden, maybe. It's not an easy thing to do. So that leads me to the mailbag questions for today's show. YouTube comments, X, formerly known as Twitter. You can get into the mailbag those ways. If you want priority access and all sorts of other perks, go join the flock over at Subtext. Link in the description below wherever you listen to or watch this show, and you get a free 14-day trial. James asks, I read an article talking about player projections, and one of your favorite Kenyon Sadiq was discussed as being a player who could line up at tight end, wide receiver, and also in the backfield. Great minds think alike. Now, the last player I recall at Oregon doing this was Colt Lyerla. Great callback. He was a bit of a freak. Colt Lyerla jumped out of a swimming pool hip high. That's, to this day, one of the craziest videos I've ever seen. He was a bit of a freak at that time, and I had the pleasure of seeing him play in person a number of times. But the question is, do you think Sadiq could take on a Swiss Army knife role? So, yes, I think that role could still be somewhat minimal this year, and then next year, I think it pops. Because so many weapons for Oregon this season are set in stone. Whether that's T. Fergus tight end, like Sadiq's potential is immense. He's not going to pass Terrance Ferguson as Oregon's number 1 tight end receiving option this year. I think he could pass Patrick Herbert as the number 2 receiving option, but has anyone watched Herbert the last couple of seasons and thought, man, that guy's no good? No. He's been great. He catches those tight end screen passes, and like T. Ferg, he does exceptionally well. And he's caught balls up the sideline, over the middle of the field. He's got good hands. He's good after the catch. He's not as fast or as explosive as Sadiq, and you can line him up out wide. But yeah, I'd expect him to be more involved. He only had a handful of catches last year. Sadiq, he had a couple of carries as well. You know, he had the pop pass for a touchdown in the Fiesta Bowl against Liberty. That's not a play that you run for a traditional tight end. It's just a play that you run for him. But last season, he had just 5 catches total for 24 yards and 1 rush for 12 yards. I think he had another rush that might have gotten called back. But yeah, he didn't do anything major. He didn't have a big role in the offense. And I think that, you know, he's changed his body a little bit and he's bulked himself up. I think he has a bigger role. But is he a focal point? No. I think he's just kind of a gadget piece who you have a play designed for, you know, 1 or 2 looks, you know, whether that's the backfield or at the tight end spot or something I could see them doing. But again, they'd probably just do this with Trayshawn Holden for this season at least, is, you know, have like a heavy goal line set. And, well, I suppose they do it with him because that would, you know, fool the defense a little bit more. You could have a heavy goal line set, you know, the jumbo package that Oregon has had the last couple of years with since Lanning's gotten here, and line him up as a tight end and then motion him out and get a 1v1 and take a fade shot to the end zone. I mean, that's something you could do with some other players, but I mean, he's 6'3", 220. I think he's bulked himself up to about 240 or so. But that's just not something you can do with every sort of player. So yeah, I think he'll have a couple. I think he'll surpass his stats from a year ago, like 5 catches for 24 yards and 1 carry for 12 yards. He will have more of a role in this year's offense than that. How substantial remains to be seen. I think it could depend on, you know, how healthy Noah Whittington is. So how often do they put him in the backfield as a second guy with Jordan James? And, you know, how involved is Patrick Herbert, or how impressed are they with him? Could depend on a lot of things, but he's a great option to have. This question came in. I made a mistake in my notes. I don't know if this came from James, if it came from someone else, and I'm not able to give you credit here. I apologize, but you know who you are asking this question. Do you think there was any truth that Lanning was trying to find Brandon Dorlus another year of eligibility? It seemed like he was the last of the players to announce he was going into the NFL draft, and for funsies, if they had found a way to get him 1 more year, how much of a positive or negative impact would that have had with our current D-line? So I haven't heard that rumor before. I wouldn't push it past him. Dorlus has been the best defensive lineman for Oregon the last couple of years. Lanning clearly likes him, and how could you not? He was, you know, a 4th-round NFL draft pick, and he led Oregon in pass deflections. Gosh, I should have gotten that trivia clue right on Friday with Jared. But he led Oregon in pass deflections last year. He's been one of Oregon's sack and tackles for loss guy. He's incredibly disruptive. Like, it wouldn't surprise me. Again, I haven't heard anything, but when I first read this question, I thought, I mean, I would too. You know, they probably don't get Derek Harmon, perhaps, if they'd gotten Dorlus another year, but maybe they do. And then your starting defensive line, like, does Jamari Caldwell or Derek Harmon or Brandon Dorlus suddenly become a rotation guy rather than a starter? Maybe, but in all likelihood, I think Caldwell and Harmon came over to start, so you probably wouldn't have gotten one of them. Which one? Probably Harmon. Just be my guess, because Caldwell came, in this hypothetical timeline where they're trying to get him another year, Caldwell came over way before Derek Harmon did, who didn't join the Ducks until after spring ball for Michigan State. So, if they'd found a way to get him another year, it'd have a positive impact, because there aren't defensive linemen like Brandon Dorlus who have that experience, who have incredible, just impeccable handwork to be disruptive on the interior and on the exterior as well. Like, other than Jordan Birch, there isn't a guy who can line up inside and outside. Dorlus can do that. But do I feel like Oregon has done a great job replacing the void he does leave? Yeah, I think this is the best Oregon defensive line in a decade, including this past year, because the true sophomores are going to be better. Birch is great. And you bring in Harmon and Caldwell from Michigan State and Houston, respectively. I've got big hopes for the defensive line. Keep the questions coming. The content will continue as well. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.